Um, hello, Bella. Thank you for joining us. I know you're in the midst of chaos was your word. Um, we have some pretty interesting solar and lunar activities going on as we're kind of ramping up towards the equinox, or the solstice rather, not the equinox, the summer solstice. So how are you doing, and what's going on for you at this time?
Well, I'm Taurus in my life's work in my sun. So of course, when I'm moving, we like stability, comfort, beauty. You know how it is. The same thing as when you clean your house, like deep cleaning. It always looks worse before it looks better. So when you move in and everything is like perfectly white and clear and spacious, and then you bring all your things. So before they are into place, it kind of feels like a bit chaotic. And then I feel like the weather today, it's been thunderstorms, and I have a really big balcony. So I've been like following the weather. And right now in the 12th gene key, which is made up of receptive earth and creative heaven, so masculine and feminine, and it felt a bit like also that maybe the clash that we can see when hot air, cold air coming together, and then it has those interesting, thunderstorms and rain and lightnings. So for sure, feeling like there is some energy going on. And yesterday was the squares. I moved the day of the square between Uranus and Saturn, and I think we spoke about that last week. The tension between the old and the new, and so yeah, it feels like a lot is going on.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the kind of the hexagram for the current solar gate, which is gate 12. And in the gene keys, that brings up the frequencies of the shadow of vanity, and our gift of discernment, which sort of, discernment sort of seems like a necessary thing to even function in the world. But it kind of can get a little deeper. And then the city of purity. This is kind of a particularly special gene key. I mean, they're all kind of special. I feel like every week we're like dealing with another one that has incredibly unique qualities. But this is a gene key that relates to what is called a stop codon. So there's not a chemical relationship in the body. It's actually an aspect of our gene code that relates to absolute transformation, from that sort of mystical definition of transformation. When a caterpillar goes into its cocoon, it turns into a gooey mass. There's no more caterpillar in there. And then it reforms itself as a butterfly. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of transformation, where there is no relationship between the form of what exists and the form of what it will become after transformation. So it's a pretty cool gene key, and I'm excited to get into it. One of the things that, Bella, you mentioned that I was thinking about around this particular gene key is that hexagram that has heaven over earth. And every time I look at this gene key or this hexagram, I think, oh, everything is in perfect order. Heaven is above earth. This is the way it ought to be. And that would be true if nothing ever changed. If the earth was in a state of stasis and there were no changes, there was no life, that would be perfect. But this state doesn't exist without changes going on. And what is happening is the separation between heaven and earth is growing wider and wider. So in fact, the opposite energies tend to be present, where things can be completely out of place, where if you're moving, you know, you're you're gonna experience the chaos of transforming your relationship to your living space. Pretty cool. Um,
I would
so
expect
Bella,
that for
what?
you
Yeah,
because
go
I
ahead.
know that. Oh, I'm muted. I know that you had some revelations this week, and I wanted to make sure that we also speak about that because I've been curious, like this, waiting for it to be shared.
Yeah, um, feel free to prompt that whenever it feels appropriate. Um, but let's um, let's. I, so Bella, I'm curious. I would love to hear. You know, a lot of times we can focus on the movements of the celestial bodies, the planets. Where's the sun in terms of how we're relating to it? All these things. I would. I'm very curious just to hear some reflections from you about your the way that you see and experience this shadow frequency of vanity and how it functions and what's the relationship with this, like, you know, I brought up that, oh, this is related to a stop codon, and it doesn't have a manifested chemical in our genetic structure. So what's the deal with this particular gene key and this experience of the shadow and where it goes to from there?
Yeah, well, when you speak about the chemical, the amino acids, the way that I see it then is in that cluster of stop codons. So we have the 12, we have the 33, we have the 56. So here we have what we call the trials. This is a ring of trial, and we can see just looking in the world, there is a lot of distraction, more and more, I believe, which is the 56. There is also sometimes I feel like from that there is a lack of mindfulness. We don't retreat. We just consume and consume and consume through this distraction. And somehow there is a kind of vanity in that too. Oh, I know so much, and I have so many phones, and I'm, all these things where we are kind of putting ourselves like better and higher. And that takes me into, we have been speaking about the six line, because you have a six line in your activation sequence. I have a six line in my activation sequence. And sometimes with the six lines, because it has that ability to discern and see the big perspective and kind of, see the future, it feels like it's more than, because you can see all that. And it kind of stops living completely. It becomes that judge. And I feel there's a similarity with the 12th gene key. Really, for me, purity is that heart that is always, it's always open, because it wants to live life fully. It wants to feel truthfully, even if it hurts. That the purity of the 12th is to live with a completely open heart, and knowing that if it's authentic, it's pure. It doesn't matter if it hurts. It doesn't matter if it's messy. And it's also what opens the door to the beauty whenever the beauty is there. So the shadow frequency for me is that cowardness in a way. I don't want to dip my toe in, because I'm good at seeing what's good and what's bad, what's high and what's low, and being a kind of judge in that, and being cautious about who you're with, like over cautious about who you are with, what you're saying, wanting to be perfect. It's that dilemma of like wanting everything to be perfect. So I actually feel like six lines and the 12 are similar in a way. Um,
Mm, yeah, that's an interesting thing I hadn't thought of in terms of the relationship. When you look at that, um, the makeup of the 64 hexagrams and how that functions geometrically in terms of our human systems, that relationship to between 6 and 12 is built into the system. And um, I hadn't considered before that, yeah, anyone who's working a six line or is expressing a six line or is, has one active in their form is going to come across that shadow of vanity is going to manifest somewhere in their expression, regardless of the intention of that person in their expression. One of the things that you just said, sort of, that idea of becoming a judge, of being able to see the big picture and say, well, these are the good things and these are the bad things that are taking us away from where we actually want to go. Or, you can move into that state of, these are the good things and these are the bad things, and I know that these are the bad things for you, where you can begin to, because of that big picture view, begin to make judgments on behalf of other people because of the ability to see. Now, if you don't have a sixth line in your profile, or you don't have a plethora of them throughout your design, you may not relate to that idea very much. But it's likely that you've come across a few people who seem to, without real any without having to try, they come off as arrogant in terms of their knowingness or in terms of their relationship with who you are. And to me, that's kind of like an extreme expression of this vanity shadow frequency that everybody can look at and point at and go, there it is. But to me, what's really not just interesting, but also somewhat mysterious about this particular shadow is that ability to judge is also can be synonymous with the gift frequencies, the higher frequency expression of discernment, of actually being able to see clearly and choose resonantly based on the opportunities in front of us. That's what discernment is. And yet that shadow of vanity permeates the experience of discernment. There is no escaping the shadow of vanity as long as you are in those gift frequencies. And I would suspect, even if you've reached into the purity of your heart and are somehow expressing some of the frequencies of that city expression, that vanity is still going to be with you as long as you are recognizing that you are you. Like, that gift of discernment says, I'm John, that's Bella, and we're different. And right there, that recognition of any form of separation sets up the conditions where vanity manifests. It's like impossible not to be vain in that way, because you can even have vanity about not being vain. You can say, oh yeah, I'm totally humble, and and see that as a good thing. And that's another manifestation of vanity. It's like inescapable.
Yeah.
So that to me suggests that there's something going on in this particular gene key that has there's a different configuration happening here. Oftentimes when we look at the gene keys, we see a shadow frequency and it kind of overlaps into the gift frequency. And then you kind of see that gift frequency where, okay, sometimes the shadow comes in, but eventually it fully transforms. And once that gift frequency is transcended, you're like, wow, now we're in a different universe. Everything is different. But here, this shadow just never ends until you are completely annihilated. And maybe that word carries some connotations for you, but I mean it from the sense of, boy, how do you describe that? Unification, annihilation? I don't know. When you become literally one with everything, that there is no boundary to you anymore, not even a physical one. You literally become the universe. That's sort of what really gets me about this, Bella. So I'm excited about it.
And if we think about the braid again, that this Siddhic frequency, the city of the one is beauty and the city of the two is unity. So here we say purity is, I guess, beauty of unity or something, it's we are, we are looking at those polarities of the universe, and really the complementarity, which I think is the gift frequency, looking at the complementarity of those, and the shadow frequency, looking at how they're different, the separation. So I maybe a big, like, really here to focus on the complementarity of polarities. And when we can see that and speak to that, because here we have a throat gate, then that's when, what you were saying, that's when we have transcended kind of being stuck in the shadow state, and we can be more on the pathway of discrimination.
Yeah, I feel like that seems like a real key for working with this particular frequency as it moves through our system. As our life energies come through us, we direct our life energies in particular ways.
Maybe I can share and show people too where it is in the body graph to kind of.
Yeah, please do. That would be great. Let me just do that. Yeah, go ahead. So we're going to see here that the 12 is just on the right hand side of the throat center there, and it connects down to the solar plexus there on the side. And this is interesting to think about in terms of our primary chakra system, the 7 chakras that are set up vertically within our biological system, because that solar plexus area is generally has, in terms of our vertical system, has to do with the energy that we are able to use to create activity. So what is it that powers our actions, whether it's ambition or desire or some other form of motivation? It comes through that solar plexus chakra and powers our choices, gives us the energy to do things. When that solar plexus chakra is completely depleted, that's when you have to have a lie in bed all day. That's kind of what happens. You won't be able to take action or even access any motivation. But here in the human design system, that solar plexus center while it has some overlapping role there, it has kind of a different role in terms of its functionality with what energies are coming through that center. And the way I often see the heart center in the human design system is like, that's the will center, where we get a motivation and we exert our will in order to create something, right? But the solar plexus is like the thing that sort of translates the energies of our experience into movement through our system. So like if you're a generator and you have emotional authority, then you've got that solar plexus is all, it's churning, and it's really important for you to allow that entire process to take place before taking action if you're going to be in resonance with your own system, right? Bella, do you have an open emotional center?
Yeah, I have nothing at all, not one single gate.
So can you just share a little bit about, for those of us, I'm defined there.
Mhm.
So for those of us who are defined, can you just share a little bit about what it's like to be undefined in that area in terms of like what's going on there?
Yeah, I can really feel, so even beyond, like even before knowing any of these systems, I can really feel how you are. I can feel you emotionally. So, and even before I'm adult, even if before I know something, I'm going to feel either safe with you or unsafe with you. Because if you are somebody who is aware of your emotional wave, aware of your emotions, aware that some days you might wake up and feel lethargic, some days you might feel like wake up and feel like really a desire to do a lot of things. If you have an awareness of your own emotional intelligence, when I'm with you, I'm going to feel really safe. I'm going to feel like it's gonna feel nice because it's like somebody who's like fueled by emotion. Somebody it's gonna feel rich and nice. However, many people, like 50% of the population, is defined emotionally, and I would say that more than, well, the majority don't have this emotional intelligence because we haven't learned about emotional intelligence. It's not okay to have a super bad day and then a super good day. Like we are supposed to be stable. Like so, all this conditioning as well, and also not a lot of tools when you feel turbulence, when you feel weakness, when you feel dishonor, when you feel reaction, when you feel desire, when you feel victimization. Like how to deal with it. We don't have a great toolbox as human beings. We're supposed to like go to our mind and be rational, but it's like completely two different places. So what happens when somebody isn't that aware and doesn't have a really, can't really take even responsibility for their own emotions and make decisions when they are either really angry or really happy, and then the turmoil of having made a decision that the next day feels wrong, like all that, when you have nothing in that center, or for me, but even when you're open, it's going to feel like really unsafe. So our not self theme is that we are going to kind of walk on glass and try to prevent the emotional wave from being overwhelming. So we are going to avoid confrontation, avoid truth, avoid, like, really just kind of walk on glass and trying to make it nice, be this kind of Mr. Nice guy in order to feel more safe. So in a way, it's also like a selfish thing. We don't want to feel unsafe, so we are going to do this artificial thing so that we can feel safe. And I believe one more thing is a little bit more technical. Depending on what you have defined in the chart we're just looking at, this person has 36, or this is not a person, this is right now. This is the planets that are creating it. But if this was
This
a
is
person,
if you were born today, right now.
we're today, and at the same time, we don't have the red side, we only have half of the activations. But let's say somebody has an emotional center that looks like this: turbulence and victimization. And here it's, freedom and compassion or humanity, the high frequency. The thing is, if you're out in the world with a lot of distorted or low frequency emotions that aren't really taking responsibility for the people that are creating those waves, your preferred way of doing it, or your body graph's preferred way, is going to have to do with the themes of turbulence and victimization, because you are here to learn something in your open centers through those themes. So you're going to be able to understand those themes really well. When it's completely open, like for me, I don't really have a preferred way. And what I believe that a lot of people that have completely open emotional center, they are probably in a mental hospital, because it's like you can feel everything. There's not the same thing every time because everybody's unique. You don't have a preferred way of processing. So it's like a little bit like a pressure room. You take in that wave that isn't taking responsibility for, it amplifies in you, and you find one way or another to kind of get it out, or you feel like you are getting choked by it. And I feel like, yeah, I feel like the emotional center is one of the biggest things of what's happening now, even when we say the new and the old. This is where the three awareness centers we've been speaking about: the mutation of the spleen, the mutation, like, no, the development or the evolution from the splenic awareness to the ashna, the mind awareness, to the emotional awareness, and how right now there is this mutation going up to 2027. So I believe that this is huge, and both for emotional authorities and non-emotional, it's so important to understand this. It's I believe that there's important work, important awareness more than anything to have around this. And I have chosen in my life to really, because like I say, the majority of people that have defined are not that aware. My parents had defined emotional. I was swimming around in their emotions, trying to mediate between them. I've chosen partners with always open sacral generators. That's the only thing that kind of feels safe, even when it's like off. Kind of, even when it's off, it feels safe enough. Maybe because I'm an emotion generator, but also because I know that if there is nothing for no reason. And that's the thing, when you are not emotional, it's like it's the to be the predicament of living somebody else's wave that isn't safe. It's not fun. So at least you would live with, you choose to not go there. But that's sad, because the richness is really when you have the open emotional and the defined emotional. There's a richness there. There is a interchange. There's a reflection. There's so much to feel together. And unfortunately, a lot of that has been felt in low frequencies because we haven't had the tools for emotional intelligence.
Well, so I think that really brings a really great point about what we're doing with Lunar Alchemy, which is doing a process of contemplation and quantum entrainment in order to transform the frequencies of reactive qualities and repressive qualities for those low frequency shadows that are running through our systems, to allow those frequencies to get higher to the point where we can begin to choose our responsiveness to the people in our lives and the situations in our lives. And when, looking at that emotional center in terms of our relationships is extraordinarily important. And it's part of why I brought up the emotional center at all, because this gate 12, has everything to do with moving our expression into the world from a place of not just authenticity, but of absolute purity in terms of moving in that direction. Is a human being by nature, can we be pure at any moment? Well, I haven't been convinced that I've ever met a human being that was in a state of absolute purity. However, I have heard about human beings who have transformed into that form of purity. And it's a form of, it's called Maha Samadhi in the yogic traditions, where a person is able to leave the body without injuring any biological aspect of the body. It's essentially, becoming one with the force, as it were, in pop culture, if you were to follow the lore of Star Wars. So as we're working with this possibility of expressing ourselves in purity, we have to do that not only on our own, but in relationship with other people. And when we're looking at our vertical chakra system, what we're looking at from this expressive nature is the chakra at the base of the throat. This is where your larynx is. Richard Rudd, I think, talks about the Adam's apple when he describes this particular gene key as being an aspect of, like, what does Adam's apple mean? It's this masculine manifestation of the expressiveness of our nature. And this throat chakra is situated in terms of the primary centers, that it is the primary center just above the one around our heart. And if you're not aware of this, the heart chakra is not about processing an experience of love. We often relate our experience of love to our heart space. When we fall in love, we love someone with all of our heart, right? The heart is about processing frequencies that are in resonance with your own pure nature. So everything that moves through us energetically is going to be processed through this heart center in that particular way. And so if we have, and we all do, this shadow frequency of vanity present, no matter whether or not we are working within the gift frequencies of discernment, that sort of, and we didn't really define that too much. So you may want to look that up at some point to learn a little bit more about it. It relates to the arts and the expressiveness of humanity and love in particular, not the universal kind, but the very personal kind of love. And that kind of love is connected to this heart space that is directly beneath that throat chakra. So what happens also in this heart space is a refinement of the emotional experiences in our life that's going on. When we normally have emotional experiences, I'm happy, sad, angry, afraid, all of those types of things, those types of energies tend to originate a lot lower in our energetic system, in the sacral area, and in some cases in the root area for where do those emotions, where do they originally get processed in our body for us to feel on an energetic level. When we're able to transmute those emotions, if you've ever been angry about something and you discovered that you were able to let go of your anger, to maybe forgive someone for something they did to you, or you just decided that you were done feeling that emotion and you completely released it, that's a movement of transmutation of emotion from those lower centers through the heart chakra space. And what you've done in that moment is transformed emotional energy into a pure form of energy, that same purity that we're talking about in terms of this particular gate. And so when we're looking at this connection from the 12 in the throat down to that emotional center, that is the pathway that we are looking for in terms of working with this shadow. And when we experience the emotional effects of this particular shadow, whether we're falling into some form of spiritual egotism, elitism, or something like that, or we've become the more reactive nature, kind of just unleashing malice on other people because we're able to see things that are going on in their experience that we can kind of like pick out and degrade. We need to transmute those emotions through this this vertical heart center space, or through that particular channel from that 12 to the 22 that you see in the human design system. And this is really where I see this particular, this shadow, it never lets go. As long as you know that you are you, it is going to present possibilities for you to separate yourself from others as being better than or worse than others, rather than being able to experience total unity with others, which, like I said, I don't know how possible that is within our current form. I'm sure there are states that get really darn close to it. So that's a little bit of details about this, how the energetic system works with this particular gate. And so what's going on with the moon cycle where we're at right now, we're waxing in the direction of a full moon, which is still a ways off yet, but it's growing. We're getting these illuminations growing into this awareness of the presence of vanity in our experience of that separation. Um, Bella, do you have anything to add before we kind of move on to our next phase?
Yeah, there's something just with the direction of the the 12 and the 22. You know, it feels like it's both speaking to, you know, open the other. It's speaking, it's a channel of openness, but it's also feeling so it can be expressed in the world. Like there's something there about the two directions that I was just feeling into, and knowing that, I mean, I know several people that were very artistic that have that channel and they are bringing something to the world, but they can't fake it. And that's the beautiful thing. So if you're a DJ and you are playing music and you're not in the mood, if you have the, you know, if you have the 1222, that doesn't work for you. You're going to take whatever you need, whether it is, you know, like even if you need to take a glass of something, if, because that 1222, it's not going to, if it's not in the mood, it's not going to be able to share authentically. And that would be the worst thing for 1222, to be like, I'm just doing my work, I'm just putting music for, no, it's like feeling the dancers, yeah, expressing through them, knowing, you know, reading them, knowing what the next song will be, seeing when like you're a little bit too upbeat so that people leave the dance floor. Like that is the 1222, and it has to be in the mood to do it. It has, so it is a very, it's a very beautiful channel, and it has that, like, it's going to express in a way that is powerful. You know, I think the saddest, like, love movies and love poetry and love songs comes from it, but also the most beautiful. So it has that authenticity that doesn't care. You know, it kind of comes from, yeah, it doesn't have a preference. And that's the program we partnered with the 11, that is saying, I'm dancing with the archetypes of the heavens, I'm dancing with the archetypes of the underworld, and I don't have a preference. So yeah, I can feel that courage of like feeling it all and keep the heart pure. And maybe it's pure because you dare to feel it all. That would be my kind of where the, yeah, where we can round off, I guess, for Facebook.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful reflection and an important part of this particular gate, in that brings it into something where, you know, everybody can understand, is that courage to feel everything,
Mhm.
to experience what is happening, whether you're having bad emotions, good emotions, scary events, exciting events, no matter what is happening in your world, to just open yourself up to receiving that. Um, that feels like the way to work with this particular illumination that's going on. So, if you're watching on Facebook, thanks for joining us. Feel free to mention in the comments if you would like to engage your solar membership with Lunar Alchemy, and you can have some questions with us following our discussion during that time, and also receive the quantum healing transmissions that assist us to integrate those higher frequencies, allowing our systems to go through the mutation process that is described by the human design and gene key systems, to allow for higher frequency energies to become the primary source of your expression in the world. And that, of course, by nature will change everything in your world. So just comment that you're interested in that, and we'll get you connected with how to do that. So we'll see you another time. Let's go ahead and continue with our members.